So today we're testing the penetration of different 223 rounds on standard 2x4 wall studs. We used a 1-in-7 twist 11.5 inch BCM ELW at 20 yards, 3 shots for each round type in different board sections for testing the repeatability. The studs were placed 6 inches apart, which I know is not at all similar to a setup that would actually be found in a normal living environment, but I think we can still glean informative data from these results. So we tested 3 defense-geared rounds, 2 varmint rounds, and 2 more standard loads, one FMJ and the other hollow point. Those rounds were the Speer Gold Dot Soft Point 64 grain, the Winchester PDX1 5.56 Split Core Hollow Point 60 grain, the Federal Tactical Rifle Urban 55 grain High Shock Soft Point, the Fiocchi V-Max Polymer Tip 40 grain, the Hornady ELD Match Ballistic Tip 73 grain, the Fiocchi 55 grain FMJ, and the Black Hills 52 grain Match Hollow Point. So for the test results, the Speer Gold Dot Soft Point 64 grain on round 1 made it through the 4th and stopped at the 5th stud. On round 2, it made it through the 5th stud and stopped on the 6th and started tumbling after the 3rd. On round 3, it made it through the 5th and stopped on the 6th and started tumbling after the 3rd stud again. Now for the Federal TRU High Shock Soft Point 55 grain, on the first round, it made it through the 5th and stopped on the 6th and started tumbling after the 2nd. On round 2, it made it through the 3rd and then exited the bottom and had started tumbling after the 2nd. On the 3rd round, it made it through the 3rd and then exited through the bottom. Now for the Fiocchi V-Max 40 grain, on the first round it fragmented after the 2nd board. On the 2nd round, it went through the 3rd and stopped on the 4th. On the 3rd round, it blew a chunk off the bottom of the 3rd and clipped the bottom of the 4th stud. Now for the Hornady ELD Match 73 grain, on the first round, it fragmented after the 2nd stud and did the same thing for the other 2 rounds. Now for the Black Hills Match Hollow Point 52 grain, on the first round, it made it through the 4th and stopped on the 5th and started tumbling after the 2nd. It did the same thing on the 2nd round. On the 3rd round, it went through the 3rd, then exited through the bottom, and it started tumbling after the 2nd. For the Fiocchi FMJ 55 grain, it got the same results for all 3 rounds. It made it through the 3rd stud and then exited going under the rest of the studs and started to tumble after the 2nd. With the Winchester PDX1 Split Core Hollow Point 60 grain, on the first round it fragmented after the 3rd. On the 2nd round, it fragmented after the 3rd again. And on the last round, it fragmented after the 3rd and continued through the 4th and finally stopped on the 6th. Now, I think the 5.56 223 round is extremely effective for defense purposes given its high velocity. Ballisticians say there's sort of a magic number of around 2,200 feet per second that causes permanent disruption to the tissue rather than a temporary expansion cavity in a wound track that happens in lower velocity rounds. The upshot seems to be, even if you are using varmint rounds, there's no getting around the fact that you always have to know what's beyond your target. And it doesn't seem to really matter what type of effective defense cartridge you're using, be it 9mm, 12 gauge, 7.62, etc. You need to have that effective penetration, but because of that, you need careful shot placement. Varmint rounds are extremely effective at their design purpose, but will likely not meet penetration standards, which are important when encountering things like heavy clothing, obstructions to vitals, or especially at certain angles of entry. Of course, there's no substitute for effective planning for emergency situations, and defending yourself through the means of this level of force is a last resort scenario. In doing this testing, I found that it seems the relative disparity of the penetration of these rounds, as long as they are effective for their given purpose. So maybe not the varmint rounds for this cartridge. It becomes not nearly as important as finding something that reliably cycles in your platform and that you can afford to test extensively enough to determine that. I'd like to do a test in the future that uses larger boards, since some of the results I think were skewed due to the rounds exiting the boards at an angle that caused them to pass under the other boards, especially with the FMJ, but I will post the results up here as well. Thanks for watching, and if you have any comments or questions, please post them below.